This week, we're attempting to break down and highlight the FTC's lawsuit of Microsoft involving the Activision Blizzard acquisition. This is the Good Game, Bad Game podcast.
This is a song I wrote about the Good Game, Bad Game podcast. Good Game, Bad Game podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Good Game, Bad Game podcast. I'm your host, Spencer, and with me is a man who, for the first time, is hopefully, probably, maybe, if I don't suck, my co-host here on YouTube for the very first time. It's my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
Oh, what a New Year's present. I know you told me about this, but it doesn't mean I didn't forget.
Yes, so if you listen to us anywhere else, but you like to listen to podcasts, it's still just audio only. But if you like to listen to podcasts on YouTube, there should officially be a Good Game, Bad Game podcast or Good Game, Bad Game, podcast YouTube account where we will upload the audio. Maybe we'll start to eventually dive into doing video, so we can I don't know, flip each other off or something.
That'd be fun.
Or have any other silly little gaming content, shorts, stuff like that. But yeah, so you can head over there and subscribe. And like I said, if that's where you choose to listen to podcasts, you now have another place, or should have another place where you can do so. Enough of that, though. Mike, how are you?
I am good. It's a new year, and I don't think I played video games this year.
Should also,
yeah,
as I say, we should point out that it is also only January 2nd as we're recording this.
Because somebody took days off and somebody wants to enjoy it.
Yeah. So wait, you're enjoying your day off by recording the podcast?
Well, no, I took tomorrow off. Today was a day that I just got off.
Yeah. So no games yet this year.
No, yesterday was the first, right? This year is just going so slow. Crazy. No, none yet in this this year of the Lord 2023. I almost did play VR last night, but I was a couple bevies in, so I was like, probably not a great idea.
Oh yeah, I never thought about that. Drunk VR.
You know what? I honestly can't tell you that I've tried it. I think I usually have enough foresight to know that it's a bad idea.
It doesn't seem like a good one, that's for sure.
I don't get motion sick, but I definitely think if I had a couple drinks in me, I'd probably get motion sick.
Yeah, that's fair. What about to wrap up the new year? Any last minute games that you got in?
I did play VR. No, we're still trying to wrap up Stadia. I actually am going to play some Stadia games once we're done recording today. That's what I've dedicated my day to.
Nice.
I don't know what I'm going to play. I have the oh crap. I don't know why I can never remember the name of these games. Square Enix makes them, I think.
Final Fantasy.
No, I would never play that. Sad excuse for a video game. That's my resolution this year, is to gaslight more people.
More people into believing that Final Fantasy was never good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not good enough to have 18 of them.
Yeah. It's going to be a tough sell, but...
Nah.
I don't know. I don't know what game you could be talking
Life
about.
is Strange.
Thank you. Yeah, Life is Strange.
Appreciate your help. I was going to play those next on Stadia because I have both of the original ones. But I think I saw they're on Game Pass, so probably gonna skip those. There's a game on there called Pixel Junk Raiders, which I guess is up to this point a Stadia exclusive. But I was reading an article that the developer's trying to bring it to. It sounds like PlayStation. I think it was initially supposed to be a PlayStation funded game, and PlayStation told them to screw and go to Stadia. So
nice.
so yeah, hopefully gonna play some Stadia games. But to answer your question about what I wrapped the year up with,
Nice.
just Stadia and VR. I think my last game of 2022 was I Expect You to Die too.
Very nice. Very nice.
How about you?
I got in a couple of last minute platinums
No.
for the year. Yes. Finished with 20 platinums on the year. Nice even number.
Only 20?
Only 20.
Didn't you get like 100 last year?
No, I got No, I got 34 last year.
How many?
34.
34.
Yeah. And I got 20 this year. And I got 20 in 2020. So 20 is my second most, tied. Regardless, who cares about that?
Literally everyone.
Literally no one. Literally just me. Anyway, I said last time that I was playing some games that were going to be leaving the PlayStation Plus catalog. So I wrapped up the two that I had talked about last week. The Enigmatis, which was like that puzzle game, and it was very whatever. And then
Very nice.
Seasons After Fall, which was very fun. Like I'm actually really happy like that um I got the chance to play that, you know, because I would have never thought to like pick it up and play it until I saw that it was leaving, and then I played a game that always was seemed very interesting because it's very like Telltale esque. It's called The Council. I don't know if you've ever heard of or
Um,
played it.
no, I don't. I don't think I did. I did see that you were playing it though when I was when I had my PS4 on for the first time in a decade.
It's very interesting. It's like old timey. It takes place in like the 1790s or 1770s, something like that. And like
I remember the 90s.
there's prominent like historical figures from that time, like all together and like basically all working together as a part of this council that like is like pulling strings and making decisions, and you play as one of the characters, and you like have to persuade people. But it's more interesting in my opinion than like just like some of the Telltale games. Love those, but this had like an RPG aspect to it, so you like leveled up
Hmm.
and you had to like put points into perks so that like through the dialogue options, like in a typical RPG, you like some things were available to you, some things weren't. It was like stuff like that, but there was no, but all it was like dialogue and decision making and stuff like that. So that's why it wasn't like you fought or anything like that. But it was fun, very chill. And I wrapped that up. I think literally on New Year's Eve, like Cinderella, trying to get it done before the clock strikes 12, and I did. So
Very nice.
yay for me. Um, Started playing another game that's about to leave called Bound by Flame, which is also just like an RPG. Um, Kind of reminds me of like just like a poor man's Skyrim in a way. Um, but it's good. It's like it's really fun, and I'm enjoying it. So it's old too. It's like from 2014 or something crazy like that. Um, Never had heard of it, and I've been playing it. I'm like, wow, this is actually really fun. So
What was it called?
Bound by Flame.
Okay. I
Um,
don't know that I'd heard of it either.
yeah, but yeah, it's been enjoyable. So yeah, having fun with the leaving soon, play it while you can sort of thing, and trying to like get through as much as I can. Um, Other than that, I don't think I've really done too much. You know, Shelby and I played a little more 7 days. Other than that, it's been about it.
What day are you on now?
We are. I don't know the exact day. I know the last like day 7 horde was day 42, and
Didn't realize it was 42 days to die.
Well, it's every 7 days. You have a horde come. Yeah, I don't know the exact day that we're on, but we're before day 49, which would be the next horde. And each day, I don't know if I explain this, but each day is like an hour of real time. So like we've already put over 40 hours into this like one save, which is kind of crazy. Nuts. Yeah. But the most recent thing, this is actually really funny. So if you get hit while you have armor on, it increases your level in that armor class. So then the next time you go to make it, you make it better. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And we were messing around. We were about to stop, and Shelby said something, and I just hit her with my club, which does 5 damage or something like that. And we're both in the 150s, so it does nothing. But I hit her and her armor class went up, and I was like, oh shit. I was like, we could just be exploiting this because we very rarely get hit by zombies. We're pretty good at staying far away and all this other stuff. I was like, oh my God. I was like, why didn't we think of this? So I was like, all right, let's just buy it. Let's just take, because we have a fuck ton of med kits. I was like, let's just hold a bunch of med kits and then just hit each other and heal. So she's hitting me. She's hitting me. My class goes up 1. She keeps hitting me. And I get down to 50 health. So still plenty of health. And I'm about to use my med kit. She says she was going to stop hitting me. She hits me one more time. Or no, she hits me. It says that I have internal bleeding or something like that. And before either one of us has enough time to realize it and for me to use a med kit, she hits me again. And she said that's what she said. She was like, that hit was going to be the last one, but she hits me and I die instantly. And we both were just like, why did we do this? This was not worth it whatsoever. I literally went up 1 level in my armor, and when you die, you lose 10 off of your max health. So my max health was 158 or something like that. And so now it's down to 148, which is still really good, but it's also a bitch to get it up there.
At least your armor is better now.
No, but it's not. That's the thing. But yeah. But it was hilarious. Both of us were just why did we think that was... We really thought we were cooking up some mastermind there, and we certainly were not. But that was funny. So
in my head, I can just picture in the actual zombie apocalypse, people doing this in real life, they accidentally bonk one of their friends, and they're like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize
he was the hell out of each other, and he's bleeding internally.
Yeah.
One more time.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I hadn't died for 36 days or something like that. We looked. My longest life was 36 hours. It was only my fifth death total, and yeah, my longest life was 36 hours, about to be 37, which that's real time. So that equates to, it's easy math. That equates to 36, almost 37 days, and I was just all just to potentially increase our armor, which it didn't do. So it's one of those things where I guess we just need to bonk each other once every once in a while, and then just forget to do it for days. But
that's so funny.
Yeah, it was very ridiculous. Literally both of us just kind of sat there what did we think was going to happen? Of course. So Shelby's I was even looking at your health, and I was just no, this was my dumb idea anyway. I was oh, we can cheat the system. It's nope. Game told me.
They build it that way just so you think you're going to be smart.
Right. And then when you're down to 50 health, you're fudged. We had another close run in where I almost died because so we have motorbikes or the mini bikes, and we were getting back from raiding this one town, and I parked in the house across the street. That's where we park them in their garage, and I parked mine, got out, and jokingly walked towards Shelby, and then she was also jokingly driving right towards me, and then didn't last minute move out of the way. She was oh, I was trying to move out of the way last minute, but didn't. So she hit me dead on, and it took me all the way from full health down to 20 or something like that. And I was just oh no. I was why did that do so much damage? That was hilarious. So it was another close call where where just like through our own stupidity, we almost killed one another. So
I love it.
It's a lot of fun though. Hopefully they update it for console like somewhat soon because it's still very like bare bones and like kind of dog water compared to like the PC. So
Is that where you guys are you guys playing it on PC or are you playing it on console?
no, we're just playing it on console.
Gotcha.
So yeah. So it'd be nice if it got updated. But anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about a rather big news story that we've kind of avoided for the past let's see, month, give or take. We knew that there were rumblings that the FTC might file a lawsuit, and then as of December 20th, somewhere in there, it officially, I think that's when it officially got filed. And so we had talked about, doing kind of an episode to wrap everything up and try and just talk about like what the current state of it is. Just before we started recording, we actually saw that tomorrow, the January 3rd, so before this episode even comes out, but after we're discussing these things, will be the first pretrial hearing for this case. So we'll have potentially some updates to discuss already next week. But it's been a rather crazy, like I said, month, give or take. We talked about some of the stuff before with like some of the things that Sony has said, and they certainly have a couple of other, great quotes that I think are worth touching on. And then obviously Microsoft, being the ones obviously dealing with the lawsuit, have had a couple of really strong points, I feel like, that they've raised. And yeah, it's just been kind of crazy with everything. I'm trying to think where the best place to start is with all of it. Because there's a lot of like back and forth that went on.
Yeah.
Specifically, FTC brought up as one of their points that Microsoft said they were going to make everything exclusive, and they cited the findings of, I'm totally blanking on, but it was either the Europe or the European or the UK group that was doing their thing, their own investigation. And then they came out and were saying like, we never said that. And that again was like one of the like bigger bases of the FTC's motion to file this.
Yeah, that was in relation to the Bethesda deal. With bigger IPs, because at one point in the past year, I think it was, I don't know if it was Phil Spencer or someone else from Microsoft that said, you don't buy these studios to not have exclusives. But they never explicitly said all the existing IPs are going to become exclusive to Xbox and probably Windows.
Right.
So that was taken out of context, and that's kind of what the FTC latched on to.
Right. So there was that. And anyway, they moved forward with this, which is, it's just so funny to me. We've talked about it before, but like, I don't understand. Look, I'm all for putting things under a microscope when it's like necessary, and if we want to be like, extra critical of acquisitions and stuff, that's totally fine. But it never just seems consistent,
Mm.
and it just seems so wildly off base to do it in this instance. Like there have been plenty of others, and like I hate to beat a dead horse, but like the obvious one to talk about is when Disney bought Fox. And it's like, how does that go through without raising much of a stink? But like this, maybe it's just because like these are the echo chambers we're so tied to video games that like we see every little thing and like all the nuance of it. But like I just don't understand how this is like being made a bigger deal of when, and we'll talk about it, but Microsoft has brought up some really excellent points, and like it just seems so wildly off base. At the surface, it's easy to like say this needs to be looked into, but literally just scratching one layer deep, and it just becomes, I feel like, fairly obvious that like there's nothing here.
For me, and I don't want to get terribly political with this, but at the end of the day, it is political.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Biden administration said they were going to be tough on big tech, and when there's a $70 billion acquisition taking place,
Right.
I think this is an opportunity for the U.S. government to try to like drop their balls on the table.
Yeah. No, and like I said, like I, and I don't know, I can't remember when the Disney acquisition was. So like different administration though,
It
and
would have been during Obama's administration, I think.
so, but with the way our politics work, of course nothing's ever going to be consistent. So
Right, and
it's
that's
not the
media
perfect
versus
thing.
tech,
Yep. Yeah. So it's
there's never a conversation about the power that media has
right.
in terms of government oversight, but when it comes to tech, then, okay.
But yeah, it's I'll let you go for a little bit and kind of like dive into the facts of it, but that was like surface level. What I wanted to kind of get across is that um it just seems pretty off base.
Yeah, it definitely is. Again, I mean, I think my point is, the one I just made, where it's an opportunity for specifically the U.S. government. And I was trying to find a list before we started recording of all the other trade commissions across the world that have just said, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and on top of that, it's just such a weirdly American issue.
Right.
So I found something from IGN that says 75% of the UK public uh, of the comments made about this, 75% are positive for Microsoft acquiring Activision. And like while we've seen the UK and the EU like obviously question this, and to your point, like it should be observed. Like this stuff, we have these commissions so these things can have oversight. They are passing pretty easily. And then you get things like I think it might have been Bloomberg that originally broke it, where Americans are suing Microsoft for saying this is a monopoly essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It's so strange, like you said. Like this is just what they wanted to throw a fit about. And so over the past month, Microsoft is bending a lot to make this deal go through.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they agreed to a deal in terms with Nintendo to have Call of Duty um, on their consoles, not necessarily the Switch. Uh, I'm assuming for the 10 years preceding the deal being closed.
Right.
They offered the same deal to PlayStation. PlayStation told them to screw. Um, so the fact that we're still having this argument about exclusivity is just so strange to me. because that's all it comes down to. And Microsoft has also said, oh well, like we really just want this for um, King and like the mobile suite
Hmm.
of games and applications. They're not denying that Call of Duty is obviously a bonus, but they're not planning on changing the business model. Like, I don't really think that owning Call of Duty is going to help them all that much. The money's still going to Activision, and while that falls under Microsoft, they're going to reinvest a lot of it, and they still have to pay those employees and
Right.
all that. So
I
Microsoft's going to see very little of that.
I also just don't see the benefit of. I don't see as much of a benefit of like making Call of Duty exclusive. Like they clearly, I mean, it hasn't been on a Nintendo product since the Wii, I want to say. Like they're clearly trying to, if anything, make it more available, which
Right.
also fits their MO with what they've been doing here of late anyway. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, but these and this isn't just in gaming either. It's in all of tech. They're trying to stop something they don't understand, and that's probably why they're trying to stop it, because they don't understand it. I mean, how many people in the FTC really understand the nuances of gaming exclusivity?
Right. I think
Probably few.
I think I made the joke that most of them must just have children who are uh, ponies.
Yeah, probably.
So and they're going, Papa, Mama, you're never going to believe what's happening. Dirty, dirty. Microsoft is trying to buy Call of Duty out from underneath me. It's like just buy your fucking child an Xbox. Um,
But even then,
yeah,
you won't have to.
I think um I think my favorite thing to come out of this, and I talked about it when we were talking about, when Sony was really pitching like such a big fit about this, um, was that it's just so funny watching like Sony try and uh, like act like they're just like so tiny and act like they don't have like I don't know a large majority of the gaming share, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just been so funny to like watch it's like the reverse of a pissing contest. Like they're trying to say like no, I'm smaller. No, I'm smaller, which is like the opposite of what they're generally trying to do. It's just been really funny. What's so
Yeah, I don't.
crazy? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I don't know if we talked about this since the last time we. I don't remember the last time we talked about the deal going on, but Phil Spencer, or if we talked about the specific issue, but Phil Spencer was on a podcast talking about this, and it was actually like a podcast. It wasn't gaming related. It was like an antitrust podcast. Um, and he basically made the same argument. He's like, PlayStation isn't trying to grow their market cap, and as far as like gamers go, they're trying to shrink Microsoft's.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. They aren't right. They're not trying to get bigger at this point. They're just trying to make sure Microsoft doesn't. And if anything, they're trying to make Microsoft smaller.
Right.
Um, in Microsoft, Microsoft provided a response. And I think there's a lot of really good quotes. So forgive me if I'm kind of like digging through trying to find some of them. But they provided a response to the official filing of the lawsuit. And just in the introduction, um, they get off to a pretty good start. They say Xbox started behind Nintendo and Sony when it began making consoles 20 years ago, and it remains in third place today, which is, um, I'd say, fairly obvious, and like pretty clear when it comes to uh, the discussion around like specifically IPs within the game, the individual games. I mean, obviously like Nintendo with Mario, and they have such a strong library, and Sony's built, and that's been their biggest argument, right? I mean, I think the whole reason why I've consistently stayed with Sony is because I know that they have like the library that I desire. Um, so I mean, it's obvious why Microsoft has looked to like bolster their own library. Um, but again, within the intro, they bring up what you're saying, that they have nothing when it comes to mobile gaming. They've never had a handheld. They've never really dipped into that. They've always been a like strictly console right based company. I mean, we were just talking about VR, and we were saying how like we don't see them ever making the tech, but we absolutely see them being like the open door of like, let's figure out how to like make it work. But we ourselves will probably never make the tech, which totally makes sense with how Microsoft is. But they say about how like this deal isn't like everybody's getting hung up on Call of Duty, but you brought up King and Candy Crush and all that, and like how massive that would be to like get them to like actually dive completely into the mobile gaming. There's just like there's so many facets to this, and to your point, like there's so much nuance to it and everything. Like how much do people actually like think and realize this stuff, or how much are they just simply looking at Microsoft paid $69 billion for Call of Duty and that's it? And we all know the weight that Call of Duty carries in the gaming industry, and that's it. Even Sony, to their point, the only stuff that Sony seems to care about is, well, will Call of Duty games still be available? That's it. That's all they care about. They don't care about what's going to happen if another Tony Hawk game is made, what's going to happen if another Spyro game is made, what happens if another Crash Bandicoot game is made. They don't care about any of that. They only care and are only focused on Call of Duty, and that's all any of it is about.
Yeah, I that's what's amazing to me about Sony's case is, they're not even pitching these other issues
Mm-hmm.
that, all these other, because Activision obviously has a ton of IPs, none bigger than Call of Duty, I would argue, um uh, but I don't think the FTC is going to know that. If you're Sony and you go to the FTC and say, look at all the stuff they're taking, like they're taking how many companies within Activision? They get Activision, they get all of the Treyarchs, the Infinity Wards. I imagine. I think they're technically Activision owned. I guess I should check myself on that. But regardless, they're going to at least get a working partnership with them, even if they're not directly owned by Activision. They're getting um, Blizzard and Diablo, and that's World of Warcraft as well, right?
Yep.
So they're getting those games, and you could say, "Oh, World of Warcraft is, a historic game. It's been around for decades, and probably, if you take the whole player base over time, it's probably a massive number. If you just completely exclude active player base, just to get the big number in front of a judge's eyes, no, it's literally just Call of Duty. Um, but it is really funny, with all the documents that Microsoft is submitting. Really, they're still not out of their startup phase. Um, you talked about Xbox not ever having a portable, and people could make the argument, well, they also like have Windows PCs, and you can game on there. But really, having Xbox integrated into Windows is a really new thing, and it hasn't been done well until probably recently.
Mm-hmm.
That started in Windows 8 and it sucked. Really got big in Windows 10, still wasn't great. Now with Windows 11, it's a little more directly integrated, but they're not like Microsoft is not trying to shut down Steam. I think in a lot of cases they're supporting Steam a lot. They're not trying to shut down the Epic Game Store on Windows, or any of the other launchers.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's a direction they head eventually, but they just haven't done that. So it's interesting. Um, and I sent you this chart that
Yep.
they submitted in their documentation. If you haven't seen it, you can. There's the one that I copied it from is from a Verge article. I've seen it over Twitter um, quite a bit recently. But there's four charts, and it really is just outlining how small Xbox is compared to Sony and Nintendo. Um,
Right.
a 16% market share in consoles sold in 2021 compared to 50% from Nintendo.
Which is hilarious.
Yeah, and which also Sony is saying, but they're not really a console maker,
Right.
which is just yeah, very funny.
Now, granted, it is worth pointing out 2021, like, think about availability. So Switches are obviously still so available.
But
But
they were hard to find.
at the start of the pandemic, yes, but I feel like that course corrected much quicker than the fact that it took 2 years for the next gen consoles to be like readily available within store.
Yeah,
Nonetheless,
true.
just sorry, that's
Yeah.
the only reason
No,
I
that's a
want
good
to point that
call out.
out. But like, but not regardless of that, 84% of it is you know Nintendo and Sony. That leaves 16% for Microsoft and
Right.
Xbox. Like that's silly. Like if it was 25-25 Xbox and Sony and like the rest is Nintendo, like it's very simple to just like completely drum it up to like, well, yeah, Nintendo's going to kind of dominate because of availability. But I'm more so pointing out like I wonder how much it would tilt that 84%. I wonder how much of the split would tilt more in Sony's favor if we were talking about a different year. That's all.
Right. Yeah, and I'm sure like during this discovery phase, they're going to have to submit data over multiple years.
Sure.
Probably since the inception of Xbox in 2001 or 2002, whatever it was. But they also have exclusive titles, which this, um, I think is a pretty potent graph because Xbox had a really good year in 2021 as far
Mm-hmm.
as exclusive titles goes, and they were still only at 10% of
Right.
market. PlayStation was at 50, which pretty easy to believe. We've talked about it multiple times. That's why you and I have both historically been drawn to Sony is
Right.
because of the exclusives. And then Nintendo with 40%. Obviously Nintendo kind of survives off of exclusive content. I don't remember 2021 being a huge year for them, so um, probably a call out on that data. But then they have, and I'm not going to go through both of these, but they have two graphs that are completely related to mobile gaming and basically how Xbox has 0% of the market share in mobile gaming. Um, by Activision has 4%, so a pretty humble chunk, honestly,
Right.
that they'd be getting. It's not like they'd be getting the entire mobile gaming market. Um, which makes sense, but I think they're really just buying King and all their mobile IPs for a platform, so they can build more games. They can build Xbox IPs into mobile with an experienced developer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting the amount of data that's coming out, and like you said, it's literally just each of these companies, Microsoft and Sony, saying, "No, we're really the underdog here."
Right. Yeah. Um, it's crazy. It's crazy when you look at the numbers. Like, I think I think it feels so even when you're like just talking about it because like they're like the main two because Nintendo for the most part like they always sorry when I say that I mean Microsoft and Sony. They're constantly releasing their consoles at the same time. So like their competition seems um so obvious, right? That like it's sometimes easy to forget about Nintendo because they're off doing their own thing, yet they obviously still have such a draw, and really just managed to have it without getting caught up in all of the like console war and stuff like that, which is hilarious. Um, but it's like it's so easy to just see them basically as equals, and then you look at these charts and you're like, you know, Microsoft has like all this money and stuff like that, but like Xbox alone is not this like juggernaut that, steamrolls everything and has it all and everything like that. Like we constantly talk about all the good work that's gone into kind of pulling Xbox up out of the dirt, with Phil Spencer and everything. Um, it hasn't really been until this year that like they actually feel like, not this year, sorry, this console generation, tail end of last console generation, that they actually feel like they're trying, so like all these moves that they're doing, they're just doing stuff like they're doing it fast, and maybe that's what's catching people's attention. Obviously $68.7 billion is gonna, I hope, catch anybody's attention, but nonetheless, like there wasn't a big stink really made about Bethesda, right? And if anything, like I feel like that's the IPs that should like people should care about more. Like it's just crazy that like the sole focus is only on Call of Duty with all of this. Um, Xbox brought up another good point. They brought up the whole gaming subscription because somewhere in it, I don't know the exact quote, but like somewhere amidst all this, like Sony basically was crying foul. Like the reason they didn't want to accept the terms is because like they wanted within the terms that Microsoft wouldn't put Call of Duty on the Game Pass subscription service day one, right? Like that was like one of the big like hangups that they didn't want. Um and so uh Microsoft basically put in as this, and it's really good. It's a bit long. I'm going to read the whole thing though because I don't want to just like omit anything. So they say, lastly, the gaming subscription service and cloud gaming service Xbox offers are not different products. The services allow consumers to access games in different ways, whether by paying a low monthly price for a broad catalog of games or playing a game on a variety of devices without first downloading it. But the games themselves are identical. Xbox believes these alternative payment and distribution models may have promise in the future, but consumers will ultimately decide whether Xbox is correct. If they agree with Xbox's visions, that will simply prompt more competition, including from companies like Sony, which already has a successful subscription service without even including its most popular and exclusive games on the day they are released. Sony may prefer to protect the revenues it gets from more expensive individual game sales, but the antitrust laws do not serve to insulate the dominant market player and its favored business model from competition. That's such a strong paragraph. And I think something that has been brought up multiple times is that you're not here to protect Sony and you're here to protect competition. And ultimately when you look at this just evens the competition, if anything. Like looking at all the charts, looking at all the numbers. But it seems so hung up on like making sure Sony is protected when they still are going to be bigger and the more dominant presence.
What's just I don't understand how this is not a huge red flag in this argument that Sony doesn't want Call of Duty to be on Game Pass day one.
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole point of this pissing contest is, Sony saying that Microsoft is going to make this specific game unaccessible for more people. And yet, a lot of gamers get their content through Game Pass.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to see the number of Game Pass subscribers that solely get their content through Game Pass. And maybe I'm biased because that's like I'm in that group.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like you're taking this game away from a big group of people. And how is that not raising a red flag?
Right.
And the answer is because, these advisory committees or commissions don't understand Game Pass.
Right.
So it's easy to just say, "Oh, no,
Well,
they shouldn't be able to do this,"
and
because
it's
then
just
people aren't gonna buy the game on my console.
right. But it's just so funny. And this is where earlier when I was talking about how like Sony has some like great quotes amidst all this, it's just so funny to me because like hasn't Sony been saying that like Game Pass isn't the future? And then hasn't Sony said there's no way Game Pass could ever be profitable? And then hasn't Sony made effectively a Game Pass clone to an extent? And then hasn't played like you know what I mean? Like
Right.
holy shit. And then uh and the icing on the cake is that just last week at some point, I forget who actually reported on it, but there was a report that Sony was going to start changing how they add games to the catalog, to the PlayStation Plus catalog. So like you still get your monthly games, and like those will be on like I forget, it's like the first Wednesday of every month or something like that, or first Tuesday of every month. And then it was 2 weeks later would be like a big drop into the like extra catalog. Um, and they're now going away from that. And it's so that they can offer games day one when they're released, like they did with like Stray. How they've done now in the past with, you know, certain PlayStation Plus, just like monthly games. But they want to have like the more flexibility to. I'm not saying it's going to be. I definitely don't believe it's going to be any of their exclusives, but I don't know if some new battle royale gets made, right? Um, that they'll put it on the service. Although I guess most battle royales are free, so maybe that's not the best example. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Something to that extent, where it's like a somewhat smaller game, but it has massive online appeal. Or Fall Guys, right? Like that's a good one. Where it's not necessarily going to be a free game, and it's going to be you know, again, the appeal is getting like as many people into it as possible, so they'll put it on the service and have it available day one rather than having to wait until some arbitrary date in the middle of the month to be able to add it to the catalog. It's just so funny, like they like you know, and give it a couple more months and you know, or a bad release of like a you know, of Spider-Man or something, which I doubt will happen. But like next thing you know, they'll be saying, you know what, maybe we will just put them on there. So I don't understand what their fear is or how they can publicly say that like Game Pass doesn't work, but then also be upset that a game is going to be put on there and say that that is unfair to them when they themselves, to Microsoft's point, could also do that. It's funny to me. I don't understand. And you bring up like they're actively trying to keep it from like I don't know what the numbers are for Game Pass, but like they're actively keeping it from that base and forcing people to pay on top of what they already pay on a monthly basis for a Game Pass to pay $60 or $70 in this case
Yep.
for a game. And it, you know, to me it just seems like it's all optics based. Like they don't want to be the bad guys who even though they are, right? Like they don't offer like what does Game Pass offer? It offers you Halo day one. It offers you Gears of War day one. It offers you As Dusk Falls day one. Right? What doesn't PlayStation Plus offer you? It doesn't offer you Last of Us day one. It doesn't offer you Uncharted day one. You know, it's already there. It's already public. You know, I don't get how they think we're like I guess dumb that like when Call of Duty is suddenly free, when MLB The Show is free on Game Pass, that we don't notice that I'm still paying $60 or $70 for it on PlayStation.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense.
For a game that they're raking $70 in for every year with minimal changes.
Right. Right.
Just to rub salt in the wound of that one.
Like, God, can they please put that on PlayStation Plus? Like, can that be the one exclusive that they say, you know what? It's all right. We make so much fucking money in show bucks, stubs, whatever, because people are fucking dumb. Like, yeah, let's just give them to people for free because that's what fucking Xbox already does. And it's not even their fucking game. Like, how is that not just the most embarrassing thing? Sorry.
Yeah, but I mean that's actually a really good point because it was a third party that said it wasn't fair that Sony was hoarding that franchise. And so it moved over to Xbox. And I'm sure
Who?
Xbox is shouldering
Yeah.
the loss on that by having it on Game Pass.
Who forced the hand there?
MLBPA.
Okay. All right. It was the MLB. Okay. Yeah. That
Yeah.
makes sense. All right. Um.
Because there was no competitor.
Well, and the idea is what is baseball trying to do? They're trying to grow the game. What is Xbox trying to do? They're trying to grow video games. What is the best way to do that? Put video games into more people's hands. Put MLB into more people's hands. Uh if only baseball fans, if their only outlet, because I mean there's no other good MLB game. If their only way to play some MLB sim is to play MLB the Show, they have to go get a PlayStation. Like, how is that fair? How does anybody look at that and go, yeah, that's good? Where's the
Yeah.
competition shit there?
I mean, the best you were getting for a couple of years was, games that had team IPs, but not necessarily like, I don't know if you can call it like player rights or player IP. So like that's not really as absorbing as like the show would be, where it's as close to real life as possible.
Yeah, or
And
you get
I'm sure,
yeah, or you get like RBI baseball, which is like cartoonish. It does have the players, but it's
right?
just like it's not the same. Like they don't compete against each other.
Yeah. So I mean, that's an example of a third party saying, "Hey, this is too much power for Sony alone to have. It needs to be available on Xbox." And it's not like Sony was directly losing money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just opened it up for more players. I'm sure Microsoft paid a shit ton to get it on Game Pass. It's just that you lose, you know, households buying a PS5 to play the show,
Right.
which is not insignificant. I get that, but it's technically better for the customers for it to be more available.
Yep.
It's going to be weird. Like it's going to end up, in my opinion, being like the Mac versus PC argument. Because honestly, at this point, it's personal preference. Like, yes, there are like some ways that a Mac serve you better than a PC does, and some way that a PC serves you better than a Mac does, just in general, not necessarily with just gaming, but with general use. But like that comes down to design, and that comes down to innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're building something that your competitor can't do well. It's not that they can't physically do it. It's just that that's not. So, like, kind of where I'm getting at with this is like get rid of console exclusivity, like inherently
Mm-hmm.
for games that could be played across the board, and that drives consoles to innovate to like try to build platforms for games that your competitor can't physically do
Right.
for cheaper. It's just such a weird business paradigm.
It really is. It really is. Um, anything else? I know there's like a couple of other like side things, but anything else specifically off of just this FTC and Microsoft, or do you think? I feel like we've done a pretty good job of kind of highlighting like what has led up to this and like what some of the arguments are, um, and I think why Microsoft has a pretty darn good case against this. But
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this plays out. I feel like they're just going to try to find ways to drag it out until Microsoft's just like, you know what, this isn't worth the $70 billion anymore.
right.
Which I'm sure is Sony's plan, because there just is no losing case here for Microsoft, and I wish we could think of one. Like I wish you and I could have an episode where we say Microsoft shouldn't be able to buy ActiBliz, and here's why. But and what's funny with go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say we absolutely could, but they would just be like wholly biased and
Right.
like not actually based in any like substantial fact arguments, right?
And
Like,
you'd have to ignore like the legally binding deals that Microsoft wants to make to have this IP Call of Duty on other consoles for 10 years.
right.
um I don't remember what I was going to say now. But
Apologies.
oh, you're good. It's yeah, the thing that is I remember now. The thing that's getting forgotten here is that had this deal not happened or a deal not happened, I don't know that we're even talking about Call of Duty being made by Activision in 5 years
Mm-hmm.
because you know, remind everyone, the CEO of Activision Blizzard, Bobby Kotick, uh, is in very hot water.
He is
And
not a good man,
no, which is funny now that he's making statements on behalf of the deal saying it's a good deal. Um,
which makes me hate
I
the deal. That makes me go, no, it can't be. it's it's awful.
but
He's winning. He's winning in all of this. That's the only reason why he thinks it's good.
yeah, I mean, he will win because he will get a significant payout and, you know, he'll just kind of be gone.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see if that holds true because you know, this deal is taking so long and you've already seen the sentiment of people like hating Bobby Kotick start to fade away. Like people have a very short memory for these things, unfortunately, especially when it involves any sort of sexual harassment.
Mm-hmm.
Um But, you know, had Microsoft not stepped in, or anybody for that matter, Bobby Kotick would have stayed CEO. Activision would have stayed the same shitty company it is. Um, and the industry would have just been altogether worse or as bad as it has been recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are already forgetting that once this deal goes through, Bobby Kotick is out.
Right.
Um, you know, and I think if this deal doesn't go through, I don't think he is. I think he stays.
Yes, almost definitely. Yeah. That
So if Sony's going to side with a rapist,
right. Uh yeah. That's certainly one way um to push an argument. Um to your point about you don't know that if we could like sit here and you know, try and come up with reasons why um why this deal shouldn't go through. This is just really funny to me. Um I agree. I think that would be really difficult for us. But for, and to quote Kotaku, 10 self described gamers, maybe it's not so hard, Mike, because people are taking matters into their own hands. And Bloomberg was the first to, I guess, report on it. That uh, some people, some video gamers, are attempting to take Microsoft to court as well to try and halt this acquisition. Um, which is just really funny to me. Um, and again, where were the 10 people who went to court to try and stop Disney? But um, they are concerned that the Microsoft and Activision merger may substantially lessen competition or tend to create a monopoly, which is to say that these 10 people definitely play PlayStation.
oh yeah.
um,
And even if you took a random sampling of players, you'd still have more PlayStation players than Xbox players.
right. Yes. That's just so funny. Just Crazy that this is what people decide to waste their time with rather than just playing video games. They'd rather stop people from playing video games. Crazy, I tell you. Crazy. I guess before we wrap up, what's your prediction for all of this? Do you actually think this has enough, staying power to like just wear Microsoft and Xbox down that they do just let it go? Or do you ultimately think that the FTC, just because they're filing a lawsuit doesn't necessarily mean anything. They could still absolutely lose. Do you think that at the end of the day, the case for Xbox is very compelling, and that this will ultimately get, and the FTC's also ultimately get shut down, and this still will end up going through? What are your thoughts as things stand?
Honestly, if this doesn't go through, then we need to take a serious look at the people who are in the FTC, either from a personal ties standpoint or from an education standpoint. Um, I don't, but I'm not to be a conspiracy theorist, but I don't think it's outlandish that a federal board would have business connections with a major company. Um, and if that's not the case, not to say that everyone in every publicly held office needs to be, uh, you know, a Zoomer, but we at least need a diverse committee that understands this stuff.
Right.
Um, so I all facts on the table, and assuming that this judge, who I forget what kind of court they're going to be from, but I do believe it's just a judge and not a jury, if I understand it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
It should be a fair argument. I mean, the judge shouldn't be biased one way or the other. They're not like an FTC judge. Um, I think they should be able to see through this and say, okay, if Microsoft legally commits to keeping Call of Duty specifically on competitors for 10 years, no issue.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't know where this is going to be in 10 years. Like, how many more? I mean, they've been doing it for 20 years, so what's another 10? But, like, how many more Call of Duty games can come out
I mean,
till
right. And the way I see it is 10 years, that's the rest of this console and whatever the next generation is. That's going to be the entire next generation too,
and
basically.
potentially the start of another?
Potentially, yes. It's certainly going to be the end of the rest of this one, and all, or if all but, if not all, of the next generation, and then to your point, potentially bleeding into the following, which is just crazy to think about. I I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight. I can't think about what the PlayStation
Right.
7 is going to look like and how it's going to fit on my dumb fucking shelf.
I mean, think back, you know, I was thinking about this earlier when I sent you the Kotaku article about the gamers who want to sue. 10 years ago, I played Call of Duty,
Mm-hmm.
like a decent bit.
Mm-hmm.
I I can pretty fairly say I really don't play Call of Duty at all now.
Right.
Gaming habits change. We had a big stretch of really shitty Call of Duty games for a while. So like how many like that's probably going to happen again. So how many more people are going to fall out?
Right.
Um yeah. So I honestly I think my opinion is that this will go through. Uh I don't I don't know how quickly it's going to go through, but I think it will. And if it doesn't, then I think Microsoft's going on a buying spree, and that's going to end up being worse for Sony.
Right. Um. Yeah, I'm with you. Uh. And something that we didn't bring up, but that Activision brought up, that Microsoft brought up, is that Activision and Blizzard are just two of, how many developers are there in gaming, right?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what the actual number is, but hundreds, potentially thousand. Because any little game that's a first time thing is it's developed by someone. It's crazy to say that, and so yeah, to your point, and we talked about that with when Jez had his article about like why Sony should actually probably just want this to go through and like not make such a big fuss about it. Is that like they could just easily go on a buying spree because they clearly have the money to spend and are clearly willing to do it if it means bolstering their library.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you though. I think provided the judge is fair and honorable, it just seems like pretty clear cut. Like I don't really understand, how somebody can actually like stand up there and try and make these Sony arguments seem like they're good for everybody when it's very clearly just looking out for Sony, while Microsoft's side of it is very clearly trying to be, for the players. So
I think from a personal standpoint, I would love if this deal fell through. Because I personally don't give a shit about Activision. I don't play their games anyway.
right.
Like, the only thing this will do for me is that, like, I'll at least try the Call of Duty games every year because 'cause they'll be on Game Pass, but, like, I'm not gonna religiously play them. I would love if it fell through and then Xbox is like, "You know what? We're gonna buy all these other studios and all their games are gonna be on Game Pass." Or even if they use the money to, like, pay more studios to be on Game Pass.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they use the money to build out their streaming hardware, their cloud gaming hardware a little better.
Right. Right. I just the only thing I'll say is like from my personal opinion, I also don't really care because I'm an elitist prick who's thinking about getting an Xbox console so that way I can have every console. Um, but you should be careful because what if they start buying up? What if they turn around and use this money to buy up like Square and and then it's just they just buy up like all these like Japanese studios and it's just JRPGs, which are notoriously. I guess you would actually start being able to dip your toes a bit more, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I would be perfectly fine with that.
So
That
okay,
sounds great.
yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. What, I'm actually for that too. If it means you start playing some of them,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think though, like from like a facts and everything standpoint, like this should still go through. I mean, ultimately, I do hope it goes through, just because there's no reason for it not to. So from like that point of view, and
Mhm.
you know, uh, yeah, again, last thing I'll say is like I'm all for if we wanna try and start being more critical of these things, I'm all for it. But like I hope moving forward that it's something that's um, fair and even across the board. I think back to the Bethesda deal. That was 10 billion, wasn't it? Something
Yeah,
like
I
that.
think
And so
so.
like it was. I don't think it was the largest. I don't think that made it the largest, but it was certainly up there. And even that probably should have been looked at the very least. So it just why this one, all that stuff. We've talked about it, but all for it if we're gonna if it's gonna continue to be fair and consistent. So we'll see ultimately what ends up happening. I think you brought up beforehand. I think it was before we even started recording. But you said like we're coming up on a year of this being announced, which is crazy to think about. And
Yeah.
it was set. The original date for it was set to go through was what, like midway this year?
I think that was the expectation. I don't know that they had like a legal date.
Well,
But yeah,
right.
I think it was
Yeah.
supposed to
Sorry.
be like July 1 technically, because they were talking about like when Kotick would be out.
Right. Yes. Sorry. Not an actual set in stone date, but what the hopeful date was.
Yeah.
So now we'll see like if that's gonna even be feasible, depending on how long some of this stuff drags on.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope we'd have at least some semblance of an answer by June of this year.
Yeah.
I I think if we don't, that is maybe when we start getting into talks of Microsoft just backing out.
Right. We'll see.
Yeah.
Anything else you got?
No, I kind of hope there's a breaking news from this topic for a while. That we could just hit it quarterly, maybe.
Yeah. Hit it. Yeah. Or just like maybe once a month, just one segment, not a full
Yeah.
episode about it. Because I think for the most part the points are beat kind of into the ground. So hopefully for the most part it's just updates, not anything real substantial that we need to like do what we did here today. But we'll see, obviously. All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening. Appreciate you sticking around. I don't think we said it last week, and I didn't say it at the top, but thanks just for another full year of listening to the podcast. If you've been hanging out, we do really appreciate it. We hope that you had an enjoyable holiday season, a good New Year, safe New Year. If you partook in any festivities, hopefully your year ahead looks really good. Looks like it's full of tons of great games. Let us know over on our Twitter what games you're looking forward to playing the most this year. You can also, if I again am not a piece of shit, you can let us know on the YouTube video in the comments section. So even if you just want to stop in over there just to be able to like throw up something, that would also be greatly appreciated. As always, if you can, please leave us a rating or review on whatever platform you listen to us, and be sure to just share around. Specifically, at the very least, if you can, share it with a mom. And we'll talk to you next week.